You're watching Sports Extra Overtime.
Welcome back to Sports Extra Overtime. It's now time for our Game Time with Greg segment.
That's our pal Greg Hallbleib. He's joining us fresh off the air from the Friday Night Extravaganza on our radio news partner, WJBC. Greg, we're going to start with the big showdown in the Big 12. Normal West and Peoria High lived up to the hype. A back-and-forth game won by the Wildcats late.
Wow, that was a crazy game. I didn't think anything could top last week's West win over Bloomington. This did. What a day for Carson Camp. I'm in his camp now. He threw 2 touchdown passes in the final period to edge Peoria High 33-32. 25.1 seconds left when Camp found Cole Hernandez on a 27-yard strike, and that tied the game. Parker Theobald found the uprights with his foot and won it with the extra point. 3 touchdown passes from Carson Camp, all in the second half. And then Davion McWhorter, we can't overlook him, 125 yards and a touchdown. And just a wonderful night for the West Wildcats. They put together 2 solid second halves over the last 2 weeks, and now they sit in a 3-way tie at the top of the Big 12 Conference.
And staying in that Big 12, a bounce-back win for Normal Community in Week 5 on the road at Manual. They get by the Rams without much trouble.
Yeah, this was a case where it was a pretty workmanlike effort for a Normal Community. They tried to get a lot of people into the game, but it was a bit of a heart-stopping moment. If you heard that big gasp coming from War Memorial Drive in Peoria Stadium, it was Ironman fans. They were wondering about Dalen Bodie because he left the game with about 5 minutes left in the second quarter, and then people saw him on crutches with an ice bag around his knee. But Coach Jason Drengwitz says it was just precautionary. They were keeping him off of the knee. He could have played if he wanted to, he told us after the game. So it was just precautionary to hold him out of the second half of a game that the Ironmen had pretty well in control. A nice night, though, for Harold Nunn, the quarterback for Manual. We should point out that he had 177 yards, 11 of 25. But once again, a lot of people into the act for the Normal Community Ironmen. They go to 4-1, and they are still unbeaten at the top of the Big 12 Conference.
All right, how about that battle of undefeated teams off of I-55? Illini Prairie Conference, Pontiac, and St. Joe Ogden, and a gigantic win for the home team.
Yeah, how about this one, Pontiac? And this was just a solid performance, start to finish, for the Indians. A couple of unbeatens, a lot of hype at Williamson Field over this one. And Pontiac got it rolling like a locomotive. They slowly pulled away from SJO, 7-0 after 1, but then they just doubled them up in the second quarter. They led 35-14 at the halftime intermission, and or 28-14, beg your pardon, at the halftime intermission, and just pulled away from St. Joseph Ogden. You had a highlight earlier from Ben Schuler, and he was the deal there at quarterback for the Indians. He had 150 yards in passing, and just a solid night with 2 touchdown passes. And how about that? Pontiac Indians go 5-0, just about have locked up a playoff spot now, running the table so far in the first half of the season.
And finally, how about U-High? In search of its first win of the season, they find it. A win over Springfield Lanphier at Hancock Stadium for the Pioneers.
Yeah, they got it done. Pioneers with a 41-12 win here tonight at Hancock Stadium. 231 yards passing for Dawson Brooks. This is what they needed. It was a close game early. This was 7-6 U-High after 1, but then they scored 21 straight points in the second quarter and pulled away. After going through the meat grinder that the Pioneers went through, plus with the injuries that they had and the personnel difficulties and trying to find people to fill the holes properly, they found a team that this looked on paper to be a pretty close game, but the Pioneers just went out and got it done. This was a solid effort, and good for the Pioneers and good for Coach John Johnson. They worked hard to get this one, and it finally comes through in week number 5.
Appreciate the input, Greg. He is Greg Hallbleib, taking a closer look at the prep football action every week on Sports Extra Overtime. You can hear him on the Friday Night Extravaganza on our radio news partner, WJBC. Thanks again, Greg.